Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to hold urgent talks with dozens of world leaders as the U.S. pushes for a peace deal with Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump says he held a phone call with the leaders of Germany, Britain, and France to discuss proposals to end the conflict. Trump says he warned European leaders that Zelenskyy, quote, has to be realistic about his country's position. Officials say Ukraine has delivered its response to the latest draft of a 20-point peace plan backed by Washington.
I do wonder about,
And we can now talk to DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv. Nick, what do we know about Ukraine's counter-proposal?
Very little is the short answer. They are keeping extraordinarily tight-lipped, having communicated quite a lot going into this, talking about potential readiness to hold elections despite martial law being in place and that not being allowed by the Constitution as currently stands. In terms of the really important issues, we don't know where Ukraine is right now. Having said that, going into this, we had heard once again from President Zelenskyy that trading territory, as he calls it, is not something that he has the moral or the legal right to do. So for now, it seems broadly that this is about engaging the Trump administration, being soft in tone, not criticizing Trump, being shown to engage with his proposals, but actually on the really important stuff, I think they're seemingly staying quite tough.
I want to zoom in on one aspect you raised there, the question of territory. Is that still the core sticking point in these talks?
That certainly has been, if you believe all the stories, which are all based for the most part on anonymous briefings, that is the main sticking point, the main point of contention. The American side's apparently pushing Ukraine to give up not only territory that Russia already controls, but also to withdraw from the areas in Donetsk region in the east that Ukraine still controls. And that is really, really dangerous for Ukraine on different levels. Firstly, it is about the precedent. From a Ukrainian perspective, that would reward Russia's aggression and encourage Russia to come and do more if not only other countries, the US, but also Ukraine recognizes that territory as Russian rather than just parking it and saying we'll leave that issue for the future. That would encourage them to come again. Secondly, this is about defenses. The areas in Donetsk region that Ukraine still controls have lots of fortifications, lots of urban areas that are easier to defend than open countryside. And then thirdly, it's about the internal politics. What would you say to returning soldiers who've spent the last 3.5, maybe almost 4 years defending those cities, why you just walked away and gave that to the Russians without a shot fired? That would potentially set up protests here, destabilize the internal situation in the country. And that is obviously something that people here in Ukraine believe Russia is trying to achieve with this.
Donald Trump called Ukraine's European allies weak after their input helped shape the proposal that Ukraine is now presenting. How is that going down in Kyiv?
Well, not only that, we've also, in the last few hours, had the headlines across Ukraine that Donald Trump has said that 82% of Ukrainians want a deal, presumably his deal. We don't know where he has that number from. And lots of people here in Ukraine are obviously very, very impressed and shocked by these headlines. People in Ukraine actually were, some of them, quite optimistic about Trump presidency. They thought maybe he could, change the situation. He would be more willing to take risks and put pressure on Russia too. That hasn't proven to be the case. I think in terms of politicians here, they are not going to come out and criticize Trump directly. We saw what happened in the Oval Office earlier in the year. We saw the fallout from that, with Zelenskyy getting basically chucked out of the White House during that visit. Also, his comments about Trump being in a kind of bubble of misinformation, disinformation. That is all something that they are not going to repeat. But obviously, people who are not official, in official roles are very, very critical and just hoping that by kind of keeping on the right side of Trump, not criticizing him, challenging him outright, they can just carry on sticking to their guns and hope that he takes the pressure away from them and puts a bit more pressure on the Russian side.
Nick Connolly in Kyiv, thanks for your reporting.